Seriously.
Today I have a topic. We're opening up a new series. This series is called Dear God, which is fitting after a series on prayer. But it could be said a couple different ways. Either I could exclaim it as, Dear God, why am I here? Oh, you're just so good, and you're so sovereign, so faithful. I can recount all the ways that you have been good, and God, I just want to live according to your purpose. I want to make an impact. Dear God, why am I here? Maybe you're asking yourself that question in one way, shape, or form. Maybe your heart is crying out that question in a way. You just really want to be used by God. Or you could say it this way. Dear God, why am I here? Again, these habits have gotten the best of me. I've messed up again. My kids, my finance, my career, I don't know where to go. Dear God, why am I here? Why am I here? Now, when you're preparing a message, Pastor Marlise would know this, Josh, like Pastor Pierre, of course. And I've had the privilege over the last 17 years to preach hundreds of messages, many of which to youth and kids and you all and some leaders and opportunities. And, in the prep of a message, it's agonizing in a way. And the more you uncover, the more you realize how much you don't know. And there's a point in a message in preparation, at least the experience for myself, is it's almost as if in your mind and in your study, you're before a giant kitchen table and there's a whole bunch of puzzle pieces. And it starts where some of the puzzle pieces are on the floor, some are in the other room, some are outside buried somewhere. And eventually you get them all to the table and you get them facing the right direction, and through pain and anguish and study and resource and feedback and prayer and prayer and prayer and prayer. All the pieces have finally faced up and they're kind of in the right order. And all of a sudden you read something or something comes up in prayer, you hear a song or somebody says something, and all of a sudden it's just... and everything clicks together, right? There's this moment where everything clicks together. That did not happen for this. But what I have done, taking this very seriously as taught by my pastor, I have done my due diligence. And I have studied the snot out of two things that I think God brought me to. And I think that it could be helpful for you. Oftentimes, I like to get to a point where I can make declarative statements, and I can bring a truth that you can hold on, and it's clear, and it's compelling, and it's detailed, and it's focused. There's not going to be any of that. But I will ask you questions to ponder and give you things to consider. Because Jesus uses parables. And it's interesting, in the 13th chapter of Matthew, he uses a series of parables to try to describe what the kingdom of heaven or the kingdom of God is like. And he uses literary devices. Now, another one of the things I studied, another one of the puzzle pieces are literary devices. And the parable goes like this, and then we'll kind of dig into it. Matthew 13, 45 and 46. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls, who on finding one pearl of great value went and sold all he had and bought it. And then it ends. There's no explanation. We don't know what this person did after he had this one pearl. We don't know if he had a family. We don't know how well his business was doing at the time. All we know is the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant who goes in search of fine pearls, and when he finds one of exceeding value, he sells everything he has to buy the one. Very interesting parable. Now, what's a parable? Well, a parable is a fictional short story that tells a big moral truth. example of this is The Boy Who Cried Wolf. This is a famous Aesop's fable. And if you don't know it or you need a refresher, the parable goes like this. There's a young lad, and he's in charge of a whole bunch of sheep out in the countryside. And maybe a middle schooler, a high schooler, which I know, very irresponsible, but this was back in the day when we could trust kids with more. And he was out there, and he was tending the sheep, and all of a sudden, he's kind of bored, like most middle schoolers, after about 30 seconds. And the story goes that he goes, "Wolf! Wolf!" And he shouts into the town. Shouts to his parents, and they come running, and they got sticks and pitchforks, and they're ready to defend the sheep against the wolf. Well, there's no wolf. They walk away frustrated. A couple days later, maybe even a couple hours later, "Wolf! Wolf!" And they come running, and there's no wolf. Well, the boy does this enough times that one time there is a wolf in the field trying to scatter and kill sheep, and the boy cries, "Wolf! Wolf!" Guess who came? Nobody. The parable is about lying. And eventually lying can have serious consequences, and it'll catch up to you. It's a parable. It's a small story, big truth, and oftentimes there's complexity that are built into it. Another literary device that Jesus uses is analogies. Here's an analogy. Time is like a thief. And like a thief steals objects, time can steal moments. Ooh. Helps you understand a big truth that if we don't mind the time, then time just kind of runs away. Time has a mind of its own, and it oftentimes doesn't take us to where we want to go, and it's not spent well unless spent well intended. Big truth, small, little analogy. I'll give you another one. This is a famous quote. "We will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream." Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Justice should roll like a river that cannot be stopped, all consuming. He's trying to relate a big truth, a big desire, and he's using an analogy to help describe it. So, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant who goes off in search of fine pearls. And finding one of extreme value, he sells everything he has and buys the one. Now, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant. One of the puzzle pieces that was on kind of the metaphorical table as I was studying this was the fact that, in the first century in the New Testament, it was written in Greek. Now, some things are lost in Greek to English. The main things are preserved. We don't need to start questioning Scripture. That's a whole nother series. But what happens sometimes is words in the Greek are redacted for readability in English. So an example of that in this parable, remember, lots of truth crammed into a small story, is the word person precedes merchant. But it was removed because it's a bit redundant and the readability is affected in English. So those who canonized Scripture removed it from most English translations. But if we were to put it back in, even for redundancy's sake, it's going to give us another piece of the puzzle. So the kingdom of heaven is like a person whose profession is a merchant that is in search of fine pearls, find one, sell everything, get it. And I think there's an important truth in that. I'm not going to draw any conclusions, but I will say this, that God views you more importantly as a person than your profession. Because as we're soon going to see, this merchant at the end of the story is no longer a merchant. He has nothing to sell. He sells everything he has to get one pearl of extreme value. He holds it like Gollum from Lord of the Rings, my precious, and just lives with it potentially for the rest of his life. He's no longer a merchant, but always a person. We sell ourselves out for our profession, our career, and the accolades and everything that go with it. Like, that's a whole nother message series, but it's just one piece of the puzzle. Massive amounts of complex truth in a very small story. The kingdom of heaven is like a person whose profession is a merchant. Now, here's some things about merchants. Merchants in the ancient world usually had a negative connotation because merchants are derived from the Greek word empros, in which we get the word empire, which I think sometimes in our context has a negative connotation. When someone has an empire, they are controlling, or they're seen as rich and elite and lots of excess. Well, a merchant was like that because a merchant would only peddle in valuables with extreme value. So much so that the listeners and the audience that Jesus was preaching these parables to had never even seen a pearl in their entire life. They had only heard rumors of these things that were like this and kind of like that. They didn't have pictures. So a merchant would deal in things that were seen as excessive, unnecessary, and reserved for the rich, the elite, the highest echelon of society, people with so much excess they didn't know even what to do with their money. And merchants would travel from town to town, city to city, looking to sit before kings so that they could peddle their wares. These merchants were not seen in a positive light by 99.9% of people in the ancient world, and certainly not those who were hungry for the teaching of this rabbi from Nazareth. Interesting puzzle piece that Jesus would pack all of this truth into one sentence, 2 verses, and the audience would be thinking, a merchant, we hate merchants. Why is the kingdom of heaven like a merchant? And why is it like pearls? I've never even seen a pearl before. I think my great-great-great-grandmother once saw one. Like, that was that far removed, a merchant. We know the story of Jesus when he rocks up to the temple, and there's a whole bunch of merchants that are selling unnecessary things to fulfill religious obligations to poor people that were coming to just try to do their due diligence to worship God. And Jesus, what does he do to the merchants? He goes Hulk on these guys. He's flipping tables, he grabs a whip, he's driving them out. It's the same Greek word. They were merchants. Different than tradesmen. Different than people that would sew clothing, which was a necessary, or build, or a merchant was absolutely unnecessary for daily life. So we've got a person who's a merchant. The kingdom of heaven is like a person who's a merchant in search of fine pearls. So this isn't a merchant that just wants to go in like low-grade stuff. This is a merchant that is going for the most excessive, the most valuable. And the other thing that's interesting is it says he's in search of pearls. Now, this is different and in contrast to the parable that precedes it. The parable that precedes it, you may know it, but it goes something like this. There was a man who was walking in a field. He found, surprisingly, a treasure. He went back home, sold everything that he had so that he could buy the land and therefore the treasure. It was a mistake, an accident, happenstance, that the man in that parable stumbled upon a treasure. Yet in this one, our merchant, is seeking a treasure. Are you seeking? And what are you seeking? Or are you stumbling? And will you find it? There's a different posture between these 2 parables. He's in search of fine pearls. Now, pearls were valuable and rare, as I mentioned. But the other thing that's interesting about pearls, if you don't know, is pearls are from oysters, which Jewish people, the audience of the parable, oysters, shellfish were unclean. They couldn't touch them, couldn't eat them. And how an a pearl is created is there's a grain of sand or some sort of irritant that gets inside the oyster's mouth, body, and it's so irritating that what it does is it starts to coat it in like this special, oyster spit or something. And it just keeps coating it and coating it and coating it and coating it so that it's not irritating the inside of the oyster. And at some point, when the pearl gets large enough, the oyster kind of spits it out. That's weird. Because now you've got an irritant or a suffering that eventually produces the most valuable thing in the ancient world. There's a whole nother message, right? Puzzle piece. Trying to fit these things together last week and this week. It drives me crazy. Like, how do these fit together? We got this kingdom of heaven is like a person, a merchant. Why do they take out person? He's merchant. He's person. even if he's not a merchant, and then he's in search. He's going for, like, he's got an intent. He's got a career. He's got some aspirations. He's got some ambition. He sees the opportunity to make money and to stand before kings and to be the dude that gets catered to, and everybody's gonna want him around because he's gonna be a dealer in fine pearls, not just those average pearls, but the best of the best of the best. And everybody's gonna want him to sit at their table, and they're gonna wine him and dine him, and they give him the best room like that. He's in search of that. He wants that career, wants that intent, that motivation, and it's pearls. Why pearls? Why pearls? They're unclean. Why is this audience, this Jewish audience, is being presented with this parable? The kingdom of heaven is like something you're not allowed to have. It's about, the kingdom of heaven is like the excrement of the thing you're not allowed to have. The thing that you're not allowed to have actually kicked it out of it. So, is the kingdom of heaven about the unexpected? Is the kingdom of heaven about inclusion? Is the kingdom of heaven about what you thought was unclean, what you thought was bad, what you thought was suffering, what you thought was going to kill you, actually is of immense value? I think all those things are true, but they're still not fitting together well, right? So the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of pearls. Pearls were so valuable that Cleopatra, very famous queen, it was said that she and her lover made a bet. And she said, I bet you, we're just so rich, we just got too much stuff. I bet you I can eat $1 million equivalent of food in one meal. I mean, I'll take that bet. I can eat. But so Cleopatra has this meal, and she's getting all the right drinks and the most expensive this and that foreign food, and it's just, but it's not, Mark Antony, he's trying to add all this stuff up. It's not going to reach $1 million, so she's puzzled. And towards the end of the meal, she calls her servants over and she says, "Get me a bowl of vinegar." Like, that's weird. Get her a bowl of vinegar. They set it in front of her. She takes off one pearl earring. She drops it in the vinegar. It dissolves, and she drinks the vinegar to win the bet. And it closed the deal. Like, they were just, not only were they rich and elite people beyond reason, much more so than modern day, but pearls were the most sought after thing by that upper echelon. And Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant that goes searching for more than one. But here she finds one pearl of great value, went and sold all that he had and bought it. Now, the word that's used for all is not like emptied savings account or like sold their kid's Xbox to like make this thing happen. I've done that. It was worth it. This word for all actually means all. It means he liquidated every valuable thing he had. We don't know what he had. We don't know if his family had possessions. We don't know if he had possessions. But the word is deliberately chosen to teach us by Jesus that this man that was out to seek many pearls, and whether it's a new occupation or he was going from rubies to pearls, like he was going to make a way, sold everything to get one, has nothing left, and is no longer a merchant. Just a dude in his pearl. This is a very puzzling parable. Now, a little side note. When you're preparing messages, you're like, okay, God, you're going to use all things to try to teach me, train me, prepare me. So like the antenna are up, like every conversation, everything I read, everything I listen to, everything that comes in prayer, like, is this a puzzle piece? Is this a puzzle? I'm going to put it out on the table, and we'll wait for that moment that everything just clicks, and there it is. And so this book that I'm listening to is macro level research on statistics and psychology of work satisfaction. Because let's be honest, when I say, "Dear God, why am I here?" eventually we get to the real question, which is typically surrounding career. What am I supposed to be a stay-at-home mom? Am I supposed to go back to work? Should I take this job there or this job there? Should I stay? Should I ask for the raise? Like, God, why am I here? What do you want me to? It's typically goes into career. So this book defends the fact that passion follows mastery. Because I think in our modern society, everyone's chasing what they're passionate about, and they find themselves lacking at the end. I'll give you an example. So there's this new thing. It's one of the reasons I got off social media, because it was just bad for me personally. You got all these people that are like selling everything, buying a van, tripping it out on the inside, shoving their kids in it, homeschooling, getting a big antenna, and just living around national parks. Sounds really cool until you got to wait in the welfare line because you're not earning any money. It's like, follow your passion. Find your lifestyle. Make it work. You can do it. If somebody gives you negative feedback or a negative report, or your supervisor says something you don't like, you know what? Just quit. There's something better out there. Follow your passion. You got to find it. No. No. That's dumb. Passion. And this book is incredible, and I hate to digress, but it's really, really good. And really, the argument that it brings is passion follows hard work, that once you realize that you're actually really good at something and you're delivering something to the world that's beyond you, that's where you find your joy. But that oftentimes takes some time and some suffering and some irritation, and you stay, and you stay, and you stay, and you stay, and that suffering becomes valuable, and that irritant becomes valuable, and all of a sudden, now you have something to give to the world that has value. See these puzzle pieces and how they're still not quite coming together, but they're close. The kingdom of heaven is like a person, a merchant, who goes out in search of fine pearls, finds one of exceeding value or beauty, liquidates everything just to get the one, is no longer a merchant, but now has the one thing that he desired, the one thing that almost took him by surprise, similar to the previous parable about somebody that basically trips over a treasure. That was not his intent. His intent was not to find one. His intent was to be a merchant. The kingdom of heaven is like. Now, I find it interesting that in this parable, the kingdom of heaven is not, he finds this exceedingly large pearl, sells it, and gives all the money to the poor. Jesus doesn't say that. I mean, that would be cool. It doesn't say that he sold everything he had so that he could get the pearl so that he could send his wife to college, finally. There's like nothing altruistic about this story. It actually seems quite selfish and unexpected. The kingdom of heaven is like a person, a merchant. But why am I here? Like, this is the topic that I was given. Like, this analogy doesn't actually, like, it's almost there. And I think the question to kind of bring it home is, what is your ultimate desire? Because you may not know what it is until it's staring you in the face. He was close. He went in search of fine pearls. He didn't realize that his heart's desire was the one. So why am I here? I think I'm here to find that one thing. I think I'm here to find that one thing. But what the parable teaches me is my job is not to chase the one thing. My job is on the way. I'm going to find it. My job is, and why am I here? It's not to sit still, although rest is important. It's not just to work hard so that I can sit before kings. But it's as I'm going, I'm going to be shocked and surprised when I find that one thing. So The other puzzle piece, that was just one. It took a super long time. This one won't take as long. So the other puzzle piece that I've been pondering, there's a guy in the church, I would consider him a friend, a bit of a mentor to me, and a couple years ago, he told me this parable. I don't think he knew it was a parable, and I don't think he knew the significance that it would speak to me for years. And he said something like this. He said, one time there was a father and his child. And his father decided to take his child to the playground. It was a beautiful day. It was like the day here in Rochester we had, was it this last week? It was like the middle of summer. Low humidity. It was like high 60s, low 70s. Blue sky. But the clouds were like those clouds that you could lay on your back on the grass and they look like balloon animals, you know, and you could say, it looks like this. And I think that shark's got a laser beam on his head. And a slight breeze, no bugs. So his father takes his child to the playground. And the dad's sitting on the swing and he's like, go play. And, you know, like most playgrounds, this one had a bit of a boundary and it filled with lots of mulch. And it was very clear where the playground was, you know. And this child, probably, 6, 7 years old, standing kind of in the middle of the playground, just standing on the mulch. And the dad's curious, just kind of sitting in the swing, watching his kid, just loves his kid, perfect day. And the kid's just standing there. And the kid's looking around, is looking at the slide, looking at the monkey bars, and the dad's remembering, a couple weeks ago, a kid fell off the monkey bars, and it kind of hurt, wasn't really a big deal. The kid looks over at like that, what's that called? The merry-go-round, right? The things that are like too dangerous for children now, so they're outlawed. And the kid's looking over at that and seeing some other kids kind of spin. And there's like uncertainty. The father could even tell from the back of the child's emotions, right? Like parents can. And the child's visibly just kind of nervous and anxious and looks back at the swings, doesn't know. Some kids over there, kind of looks just really nervous, and the dad's just kind of waiting. And the child turns back and runs back to the dad and says, "Dad, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know if I want to slide. It's kind of tall. I've been on smaller slides. I don't know if I should do the monkey bar. I don't know if I'm going to fall this time. Like, I don't know if I'm strong enough. That thing looks fun. Looks kind of dangerous. Those other kids look like they're having, should I go play on that? Or, Dad, should I play by myself? Should I play with other kids? Like, what should I do? Where should I go? I don't know what to do. And the kid starts crying in his indecision. And the father, he just smiles. He says, you know what? As long as you stay in the playground, I don't care which one you play on. Because my joy as your dad is to see your joy. When you play with others or you try something new, or you go to that comfortable place, like, I love you. And if you fall and you scrape your knee, come on over. I'm always packing some Band-Aids. And if those kids make fun of you or they bully you, don't worry. Come on over. I'll just shoot them a look. My joy is to see yours. I am less concerned than you might think whether you should turn left or turn right. Just stay right here. And you're going to find your pearl. And pray for you. God, why are we here? God, in this room, Greece campus, online, God, why? Why are we here? God, we're not talking about career. We're not talking about what to wear tomorrow. Or God, we're talking about those big questions. God, what is the kingdom of heaven like? God, I thank you that it's like a playground. And as long as we can see our Father and hear His voice, we're in the right place. So God, help us to know you more. Those that are seeking wisdom, those that are in an indecisive place, I thank you for the helper that is the Holy Spirit. God, I thank you for your word that is rich in wisdom. Would you give us a hunger for your word? God, I thank you for your people that are playing on the playground. God, that we would not become isolated. God, for those that have wandered out of the mulch, God, would you call them back? God, that we would not be an indecisive people, but we would be reminded that your joy is to see us in the kingdom. So God, I pray that we would see our pearl when it's in front of us. And I thank you that we would lay hold of it, willing to sacrifice anything. For your kingdom is valuable. We thank you for your love. In Jesus' name, amen.